What if they use xanthan gum?
Xanthan.
That's funny because it's like his character in Seinfeld used to say that about other characters like Newman and Kramer. He would do that thing.
Newman. Kramer.
But now it's about xanthan gum. That's where the joke comes from. It's nice that it's not woke either, right? Because otherwise you have to be
Xanthan gum. Yeah, hopefully made in a worker cooperative with a diverse amount of people and in high positions of power. Woke.
I covered it a little while ago about how Jerry Seinfeld, basically wanted to go after comedy and start saying how wokeness and the left and the commies essentially ruined comedy, which is just like such a wild take. I didn't know it was also on a press tour for a new movie that is universally panned as one of the unfunniest and worst movies of the decade. It's just so bizarre to me to be going on a tour where you're preemptively just like shitting on entire like groups of people as like having destroyed comedy before you release this absolute fucking piece of shit. Like, that's wild. But first, I do want to see the people who hate wokeness talk about it, because they're very happy about Jerry Seinfeld and his movie.
Would go home at the end of the day. Most people would go, oh, Cheers is on. Oh, MASH is on. Oh, Mary Tyler Moore is on. All in the Family's on. You just expected.
Yeah, there's other shows in other periods of time that are really funny. Yeah, In Living Color's on. You could be like, oh, that's pretty fucking awesome. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is on. Pretty dope. Pretty dope.
There'll be some funny stuff we can watch on TV tonight. Well, guess what? Where is it? This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap and people worrying.
Meanwhile, it's the right who just fucking cancel all the time. Everything. The right are always canceling, Hey, do you enjoy having consensual sex? I do. Do you enjoy having consensual sex with someone of the same gender? I do. Oh, yes, you're sinful and we can't talk about you or represent you in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, or that would be woke. Can't woke, what are we going to do? All of a sudden, there's going to be gays in movies, just like regular people? Just being treated the same as regular people? No, that could be reflected in society. What if that was reflected in society? Wouldn't that be the worst? Society actually went woke?
Think so much about offending other people.
Everything they're working on is terrible and is not very good.
Nerderotic.com.
Greetings, you over 1 million connoisseurs of common sense.
Damn.
Thank you very much. And the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Let's talk about woke Hollywood again. Instead of recapping the latest series of events that's led to the latest disaster, let's just keep things simple. Hollywood.
Wait, sorry, the latest disaster? Can we be very clear? All of these so-called nerds, I don't think they're real nerds, by the way. I think they all have stolen nerd valor. I think some of them are evil nerds, but some of them are just like wannabe nerds, nerd pretenders. But Hollywood going the way it did and being now kind of real shit, that's capitalism. Capitalism. You can look at it for a while. Even people who are much more esteemed than this individual and actually have, produced art. So people like Steven Spielberg was calling that out a very long time. He was like, yeah, this is not sustainable to have a business model in which, again, there's a very small amount of companies that have acquired all of these properties. $3 billion is all it costs. Think of that for a second, by the way. $3 billion was all of Star Wars. $44 billion was how much Elon Musk paid for Twitter and then reduced its value down to $7 billion. But think of how many Star Wars you can add. Like Star Wars, all of it. Just you get Star Wars. You get the all of Star Wars, $3 billion. But yeah, if you have all these companies, the very small amount of companies producing movies that are 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million, and that's before marketing. So 400 becomes what? All of a sudden $800 million needed globally in order to break even, and you keep doing that, and then there's not just one really huge film that comes out every weekend. There's 4. It's which of the 4 massive blockbusters are you going to watch this weekend? It's I don't know. I don't really care about any of them, to be honest. They're all prequels, trequels, sequels, Marvel films, Star Wars, just the over and over and over.
Got woke, got broken, decided.
But sorry, no, I mean woke. Everything I just said, not real. It's because of black people and women and yeah, sometimes indigenous people, but yeah, wokeness.
Not to work and then went broke. Don't believe me? Let's check with Hollywood. From the Hollywood Reporter, box office existential crisis ahead as Hollywood rethinks what makes a hit. Newsweek, Hollywood faces dramatic twist in 2024 box office. From Reuters, the Great Contraction hits Hollywood. Bloomberg, is there any hope for Hollywood? Time, the Oscars were glorious. Not really, but there's a storm brewing in Hollywood. New York Times, how bad can it get for Hollywood? I'm scared, why it's a brutal time to be a TV writer in Hollywood.
You know, one of the most successful and popular, by the way, I wouldn't even consider them as independent anymore, but still, I think by the numbers in relation to some of the big studios, they're still considered indie. A24, considered to be the wokest of all the studios. It's the only one right now that's actually still, looking incredibly profitable and pumping out, guess what? Non-stop original IPs. That's kind of something that they prove that actually people, hey, they're not interested consistently with having the $500 million Marvel film. They're actually interested in good movies, neat movies, fun movies, colorful films, diverse films as well. That aspect that is also, people aren't rejecting all of those movies specifically because they're woke. Because we keep looking at this idea where it's go woke, go broke. Well, during the very start of a lot of the post-acquisition of Star Wars, when the big Star Wars films were coming out, they were accused of being the wokest of all films, right? There was a female Jedi, a black main protagonist, There was an arc in which the female Jedi, she was actually kicking some ass. And then there was this whole idea that they were going to switch the whole kind of idea of the series where it's no longer about Star Wars being about some kind of like divine bloodline, but being about something that anyone should be able to attain, democratize the very idea of having some kind of collective power in this world. My word, that was seen as the wokest Star Wars film ever. These movies are some of the top grossing films of all time. They're like some of the most profitable movies ever made. And then now it's still like, well, now what's happening? Wokeness has finally reached its zenith.
Almost everyone in Hollywood wants to get back to work. What's taking so long? Harper's Magazine, The Life and Death of Hollywood. Variety, Jerry Seinfeld says the movie business is over in Hollywood. And that's just a handful of articles from the
Jerry Seinfeld is releasing a film on a digital streaming service because digital streaming services, yes, did completely change the dynamic of Hollywood and how films are both distributed and released. This is not about wokeness. This is all about a consumer product and corporations changing their dynamics and business models. It's so wild,
last
though.
4 months. You up to speed? Good, because...
So, he has a film releasing on Netflix. Like, I haven't even seen the trailer. I wanted to watch it unviewed. Here we go. Let's see what's worth shitting all over the commies. See what anti-wokeness looks like.
I believe we have split the atom of breakfast.
I'm about to finally crush that big red K that never stops glaring at me!
Oh, that's the person who thinks that like all Palestinians are rapists, right? Or that they're just like incredibly brutal subhuman monsters who need to be cleansed from the earth. I'm half remembering.
I wonder if they use xanthan gum.
Xanthan.
Kellogg's is entering.
That's funny because it's like his character in Seinfeld used to say that about other characters like Newman and Kramer. He would do that thing.
Newman. Kramer.
But now it's about xanthan gum. That's where the joke comes from. It's nice that it's not woke either, right? Because otherwise you'd have to be
Xanthan gum. Yeah, hopefully made in a worker cooperative with a diverse amount of people and in high positions of power. Woke.
You know Isaiah Lamb from Quaker?
You Kellogg's people.
It's funny because he actually looks literally like a Quaker. It's like the guy on the actual bags that you buy. You could have actually made a really funny film about the real history of Kellogg's. I mean, it is pretty like incredibly fucked up and weird, but I mean, it would be super woke because you'd have to talk about concepts of sexuality and people's own kinks and that kind of stuff. It would be wild though. It would be absolutely wild. There's been many attempts. See, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think anyone who was involved in this project at any point knew he was going to try and market the project by going like the left ruined comedy and we need like the anti-wokeness kind of brigade. I think they were just like, oh, Jerry Seinfeld, fucking comedy legend, one of the biggest names in the game, making, what is this, his first Netflix movie? Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe it's another one. I don't watch his work. Not of course, outside of B-Movie, the greatest film of all time. But like, yeah, so I could see why a lot of big names would have been like, yeah, sure. I mean, again, you are one of the biggest names in comedy. But then like, that would suck to have that happen And you gotta watch fucking the marketing for this whole movie all of a sudden be like, yeah, it's the left and wokeness. They took away the comedy. They made comedy illegal because everything's so PC SJW, you know?
Fruit magoos! What?
No.
Heat 'em up and eat 'em ups!
No sale.
Oblong nibblers.
I'm sorry, but I would take anti-woke fucking it's always Philadelphia style shit over this any day. Give me Chappelle Show. You know, I don't want to watch this shit. Yeah, I'll take some lessons in my comedy. I'll take some political information. I don't give a fuck. It's funny. And also, like, clearly the whole thing's just an ad for Kellogg's, right? I mean, I get like, oh no, he's trying to do the Barbie thing to Kellogg's, right? Like this could be a fun, hilarious story, but it's actually based on a part of history that many Americans might not know about. You know? Yeah, it looks like an overproduced clusterfuck. Needs more cast. More people. It needs more names. Not enough names. Oh, there you go. What were some of the last ones? It's just too many names happening so fast. John Slattery, John Hamm, of course. Like, is John Hamm literally in like one like throwaway scene, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, yes, but we should just put him in the cast names just so everyone knows, you know? Yeah. He's on tape saying he wanted to make a not woke Barbie. Are you actually serious? Oh. I was just doing a bit.
We are well and it's conveniently legal.
It looks like shit, by the way. It's getting reviewed like shit. It's supposed to be like one of the most unfunny films of the decade is literally how it's been reviewed. So like, yeah, no, it really goes to show that like the very idea of like, well, no, you just can't be funny anymore. You can't make movies anymore. You know, if you make movies, they'll cancel you. And I like, you're talking about right-wingers, and then yes, they don't want films to have any kind of, I guess, political message they disagree with. If it's something they agree with, it's like anyone else. You love it. The thing is, you just don't agree, I'd say, with the broad consensus of most people, which most people at this, like, you know, in this day and age, yeah, in Western society, they have come a long way in some regards. You know, they think much better of gay people than they ever did. Well, we'll say, you know, mostly white gay men certainly are perceived as more acceptable within general society. But yeah, no, just things like that. And because you don't, you hate it. And then you see it and you're like, well, fuck this shit. It went woke. Society went woke. Philip Schwartz, incredibly generous, $5. Woke comedy is better because it understands society and its systems. It isn't just funny, it's an analysis. Carlin was great for this reason. And also, you can be subversive. Also, you can try and teach and educate people in so hoping that they will change when they recognize the world for what it really is. The very idea of suddenly making someone laugh while simultaneously educating them. I mean, that was some of the most brilliant parts of classic Dave Chappelle. That was like, you know, some of the genius of his writing, and that you could find yourself laughing uncontrollably. But then when you want to repeat some of those jokes, you have to start teaching people about parts of history they may not know about.
But I have an example that comedy has been completely murdered in Hollywood, and all I had to do was a simple Google search. Anyone But You, a very mid rom-com released last Christmas.
Oh, are you talking about the fact that mainstream comedies are not dominating the box office anymore? Yeah, no kidding. Once again, same problem. Every single like dominating box office thing has to be a franchise and a usual action franchise. You can't even have big comedies that don't have lots of action, because I guess part of the marketing is like, can you justify spending $14 to $20 to going into a giant room full of people and sitting down and watching something on a big screen, unless it's just like a Dune, you know? And it's got to be really big and loud, and you got to hear that song, and it's got to like just resonate in the back of your ears.
But I can think of a couple of reasons why it was successful.
Nice rack.
Was the first
What's it? The anti-woke tits. Sydney Sweeney.
comedy to pass the 200 million mark in 5 years, and the first rated R comedy to pass that mark in almost 8 years.
Did it say action comedy? I'm just curious. Romantic comedy. Okay.
And the first rated R comedy to pass that mark in almost 8 years. And if you want to get more depressed, that rated R comedy from 2016 was Bridget Jones' Baby. Unfortunately, these facts will not stop what the kids call these days the cope. Or maybe that's just us old guys now. Jerry Seinfeld is
Wait, what are you talking about? Like, so if movies are coming out, comedies specifically, and or rom-coms, and they're not doing well, and then because of that, studios are releasing less of them in theatrical releases, doesn't that tell you something? If something is less profitable to them, they're not going to keep releasing it because they want to turn profit. Like, that's the shitty part about all this. Blazing Saddles was woke as fuck, and all the conservatives love it, probably because they were taking the wrong messages from it. Yeah, I would say that probably the same thing with Hogan's Heroes. probably like, wait, I don't know if I understand this. Wolfart 1136, thanks for subscribing with the Prime. Appreciate you. Okay, apparently Jon Stewart had some things to say. Which, by the way, you can still like be absolutely hilarious into your, you know, old age as a comedian. Tons and tons of people have done it.
Netflix is a joke fest, and he's drawing some headlines for some of the things that he said. For example, he criticized Joe Biden's age again and kind of criticized the backlash that he received for saying what we all are thinking about Joe Biden's age. But he also talked about hysteria over woke culture, and that to me is particularly interesting, and that's what I want to talk about today, because as a comedian, what he says is especially valid. And long story short, he basically says that this is much ado about nothing, and all of the comedians who are whining constantly about woke culture and leftist stifling comedy, it's all a bunch of nonsense. So the Hollywood Reporter explains, the comedian weighed in on anti-woke culture, saying he was so fucking sick of the idea of go woke and go broke. What are you losing? You can't say anything anymore. What do you want to say? Stewart said. Shut the fuck up. And by the way, the people who talk about anti-woke are the biggest fucking pussies you would ever find, specifically calling out the controversy surrounding Bud Light and its partnership with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney. I'm just so tired of it. The woke shit. You lose nothing. I'm a comedian. I've lost 2 words in 35 years, he said of phrases that are no longer culturally appropriate for him to say. Honestly, are you that fucking unimaginative that you can't figure it out? Okay, this is why Jon Stewart is the GOAT. It's because he is able to adapt and speak the truths that nobody else wants to say.
Oh yeah, and then like look at other people who have no idea how to do that. Jim Breuer is a good example, all right? Jim Breuer is in a comedy that's written by Dave Chappelle, one that is talking a lot about weed, and Jim Breuer being the kind of the stoner character in that comedy, you think that he'd probably be a little bit more progressive later in life, and the guy is just a red pill, far right, fucking right-wing comedian now just by default because he's changed nothing about how he thinks or his act. That's all there is to it, right? Like he goes in front of a stage, he's like, I don't get why people keep canceling me for doing all my racist voices. Yeah, I do a racist Asian voice. I don't even think it's racist though. I mean, people keep saying it's the racist voice blank, but like, no, I just like, it's just me just doing a character. It's a character. What? I do a white person, no one says anything, and then I do a black person, and everyone gets mad. And it's like, you're stuck in like 1991. Like, come on, man. Just like, learn, grow as a human. Come on, everyone can do it.
Comedians, they come out here and present themselves as truth tellers for saying what nobody wants to hear when they're all saying the same thing. Jon Stewart, however, is adapting and reading the room and understanding the moment. And he's saying all these comedians that are complaining in particular about in that last paragraph, it's all bullshit. They're crybabies. They're the ones who are being unimaginative. Now, he is not necessarily taking shots at any particular comedian, but I'm assuming a lot of
Blue Room, thanks for giving a tier 1 sub to Pupusama. Appreciate it.
Comedians heard that and they felt pretty awkward after, for years, many of them have been talking about how comedy is under attack and their free speech is being stifled. He's just calling bullshit on that. And he's right. Now, this comes after Jerry Seinfeld blamed the extreme left.
Hey, people who I used to smoke with are red pilled. It blew my mind finding out that like someone in the chat dropped in here and they work at a weed store in Vancouver and they said that they'd seen Lawrence Southern go in there to buy weed. And I was like, what the fuck? It blows my mind that people can do drugs and like smoke weed or like do mushrooms or do anything like that. And then like not have any either kind of like introspection or self-reflection or still see that hating people for their skin color somehow sits right with you. But like, yeah, that's just the reality, you know. It sucks.
And
there are very shitty hippies. It sucks, but it's true. It's absolutely true. Fucking Charles Manson, really shitty hippie. Fucking hippie as fuck. Super evil, terrible person.
Rap for supposedly killing
Massive-ass
TV
Nazi
comedy,
racist.
which is such bullshit because when you have shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and South Park and so many others that are still on till this day, well, I guess Curb isn't, but you know, they're beloved shows. They're very edgy, very offensive, but they are able to exist. It kind of
But also learn. We have to be honest, because like there are, of course, comedy does not age well. You know, it seldom does because it has to do a lot of things simultaneously to be very, very effective. So yes, of course, you're going to find a lot of comedy later in life has trouble, you know, being concurrent with the times while simultaneously not also offending certain groups because you were maybe not unaware of other struggles or whatever it is. So yeah, there's earlier work, especially in It's Always Sunny. Like they're the characters straight up do blackface, right? Like that's indefensible. Even if you're doing it to bring attention to white people who do blackface and why that's wrong. Even if that's the purpose behind the comedy, I think most people at this point would be like, yeah, but like, there's probably better messages you could do without having to actually be a white person doing blackface. I'll just be completely honest with you. Even if you're doing it as a bit to bring attention to the very idea of wearing blackface. I say this as someone who absolutely loves It's Always Sunny. I'm not here to cancel anybody. I'm just saying, we can have conversations about this. We're mature. We're adults. We can talk about this. It's okay. Still absolutely fucking love that show. You know, still love everything about it.
Defeats this whole, oh my God, comedy's being canceled. We can't say anything because of woke folks. No, you can make.
I feel bad about the Mighty Boosh. I mean, but there's still so many good songs in the Mighty Boosh, right? You probably still get them in your. There's a song about soup. That one will age great forever. That's a great song. It's a song about soup. It's fun, you know, and then it's wholesome, and that's a timeless song. All right, completely timeless song. Hey, I think one of the greatest comedy troupes, arguably maybe the greatest comedy troupe of all time, Monty Python. Some of the people who are in Monty Python, some pieces of shit now. They did not grow at all. John Cleese, that's a de-evolution, if anything. You know, there's a man who just progressively became more horrible as a human being as he got older. That sucks. There are people who grow, who learn. We're going to be talking about Macklemore soon. That's a good example, you know? That's one of it.
Edgy jokes. It's just like what you say matters, and you actually have to be funny and say something. But these comedians are too lazy to write better material, I guess. Now, I don't think that Jon Stewart necessarily was taking a shot at Jerry Seinfeld. I'm sure he wrote that.
Yeah, like I'll argue the Frank episode where he talks about wanting to say the N-word because he's a white racist, right? That's just his character. Frank is a racist. He's racist towards a lot of different groups, but he is a racist, but that's part of his character, and they intentionally do that to be able to point to attention to. Like, the idea of It's Always Sunny is they're not good people. You laugh at them and you love them because they're the main characters, but at the same time, you recognize they're bad people. They're doing bad things. Same thing with fucking Cartman. Eric Cartman is an anti-Semitic white supremacist Nazi in South Park. Like, he literally wants to exterminate the Jews. That's part of Eric Cartman's character. But that's the whole point, is that it's used in that way so that they can explore issues about horrible people doing horrifying and horrible things, but also mock them and laugh at them because of how fucking ridiculous they are.
That before Jerry Seinfeld made his dumbass comments. But what Jon Stewart says here as a fellow comedian is really important, because he's saying the onus is on comedians to make people laugh. You can't blame the audience for not laughing and assume that they're too offended by your edgy jokes. It's your job to know your core audience and write jokes that speak to them. If you can't do that, that's on you, not them. If they don't laugh, that's your fault. Because as Jon Stewart put it, he's lost, 2 words over 35 years as a comedian? I'm assuming those words are the homophobic F slur and the ableist R slur. If you can't make do with all the other words you have after that, I mean, that kind of speaks to your ability and talent as a comedian, does it not? Now, with respect to Jon Stewart, I'm glad that he made that point, because he says he lost 2 words. But of course, as we can all tell, him not being able to say those 2 words specifically hasn't stifled his comedy in any way. He's as funny now as he's always been, if not better. But the difference between Jon Stewart and other comedians his age is that he's been able to grow and adapt. And that's important, because at a certain point, new generations will find your stand-up, and what was funny to your generation might not necessarily be so funny to their generation. Not just because your material is offensive or edgy, but because people just have different senses of humor. I mean, I'm a millennial, and you can already see differences between my generation and Gen Z in terms of humor. So sense of humor is going to vary depending on the generation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm one of those weirdos who I find Gen Z shit funny too. Like when I watched all those documentaries, or I guess video essays, got to be clear on my terms here on YouTube about what Gen Z comedy is in the meme world, and it was kind of like a lot of it is hyper absurdist, and it's like in being hyper absurdist, it can also be, you know, what other generations might consider super offensive, or perhaps they don't even understand it. But I like the weird of it all, you know, like me and the boys getting beans at the 3 a.m. meme thing. You're looking at it and you're just like, that does make me laugh that people are sharing this and other people are weirded out that people are sharing this, though. That's kind of funny to me, you know. I don't know why, like, the birds aren't real shit like that. That's legitimately hilarious. That's like a form of performance art. And I understand, yeah, it would be nice if that movement was doing something more significant. It should now be birds aren't real and also free Palestine. Why, we can do it. We can have it all, right? We can march and chew gum at the same time.
Depending on culture, and even depending on the particular period of time that we're all in and when somebody grows up. But rather than trying to understand younger generations and adjust their comedy to appeal to them, so many...
What's Kids in the Hall generation wise? Kids in the Hall is what I was basically watching. I would have been young, but yeah, I think I was watching in my teenage years, but it's Canadian comedy troupe, basically Canada's Monty Python. And there's a good example. Kids in the Hall just came out with a new series on Amazon that a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to be super woke. And it is like very woke comedy. It's fucking hilarious. They didn't lose a beat. They're still very, very funny. If you liked old Kids in the Hall, if you watched the new Amazon series, and Kids in the Hall was already kind of woke. They're already very, very pro-gay. They were very, pro-LGBTQ in a variety of ways, actually. And that's because some of the cast members are LGBTQ. But yeah, either way, it's a lot of stuff that, yes, some of it doesn't age, some of it would be offensive, but by today's standards, they grew. There's brand new Kids in the Hall on Amazon.
Comedians these days just become curmudgeony old assholes.
You also get to see full frontal nudity, if that is something that you've been waiting for. They are, yes, fully nude in the very pilot episode.
Who blame their inability to make people laugh on everyone else being too triggered or some shit. When that's
Geezers is in the Hall, yeah.
Now, what's compounding this issue that these comedians are all talking about with regard to woke culture stifling comedy is that they're all in an echo chamber, reinforcing each other's bad ideas about the context within which they find themselves in. Rather than like trying to be introspective and realize we're all out of touch, they're all talking to each other and telling each other, no, actually the kids are the ones who's wrong and we're all right. And that became especially clear to me because I saw something on an episode of the last Club Random podcast with Bill Maher, another out of touch comedian. And he was, of course, interviewing Jerry Seinfeld. And Seinfeld made a comment about or not about a recent segment, just about Bill Maher's New Rule segments in general. And what he said really stood out to me. So let's watch.
I think what stand-up is for you is what writing that editorial at the end of the show is for me.
Oh, okay.
That's what
that piece I never, ever miss.
Oh, thank you.
For the writing, for the flow of it. The consistency is shocking. Your level of consistency is shocking.
Well,
and it's the best comedy monologue ever.
Wow. The guy who complains like, gender issues are too hard to learn. There's no such thing as trans people. You're just gay. Like that's an actual Bill fucking bit. He does this whole thing where he's just like, I don't think that you have a daughter instead of a son. I think you just have a gay and you should probably like not cut their dick off. Like that's the tier that we're discussing here. That's what is considered by Seinfeld to be the most consistent comedy writing on late night television.
Every week that anyone does.
Yes.
And
consistent garbage. If he's not being fucking transphobic, he's being homophobic, or he's being fucking racist. One of the three. And if you say something about it, like, oh, stop. I make fun of everyone. Stop. Like this is the same guy who said that he's a house N-word out loud on live television. Like,
make a point on top of being funny. Which is,
usually a point no one else is making.
Except every Fox News host. Bill Maher's recent New Rules segments, by the way, include diatribes about how selfish and entitled anti-war college protesters are, and why DeSantis was right about LGBTQ plus people being groomers. There's nothing subversive or edgy or funny or unique about Bill Maher's shtick. He's just a Fox News pundit, effectively, who tries to be funny. And throughout that interview, they were reminiscing about the good old days when people would complain less and whatnot. And it really explained so much, because they're not only old and out of touch, but all of these old and out of touch comedians are continuing to jerk each other off about how right they are about everything and how wonderful their work is. But also, they've become insulated and they've put themselves in a bubble, and they refuse to let anyone else kind of say something that resonates with them. It's just, no, I'm right, everyone else is wrong. Yeah. And that is part of the problem. They're stubborn, they're digging their heels in, and rather than adjusting as Jon Stewart has, they're just saying, nope, we're right, everyone else is wrong. But I mean, it's natural to become out of touch as you grow older, especially if you're rich. But they refuse to listen. But I think that this camaraderie that they have with each other, that's kind of part of the problem. Not that camaraderie and friendship is bad, but it's because, you know, they're all in this echo chamber. This is why every fucking comedy special takes on the same tone these days, like Triggered by Joe Rogan, or Cancel This by Roseanne Barr, and Woke Up America by Rob Schneider. And it's also why they all keep repeating the same fucking pronoun joke again and again and again. They might think it's funny because they all encourage and validate each other, but nobody else thinks it's funny. In fact, I don't even believe that they think it's funny, because how can you find the same joke that's been told again and again and again funny? The same I identify as blank and my pronouns are X and Y. How can you find that funny if it's been told so many times? And do you not feel self-conscious as a comedian that you're perhaps stealing other people's jokes? That was originally a 4chan joke or a Reddit joke or some shit, and you dipshits keep stealing it and presenting it as comedy because you changed the subject, or you changed like what you're identifying as. But it's the same fucking thing over and over again. And it's unoriginal, it's boring, and nobody wants to hear rich people complain about how people with no money and no power are victimizing them somehow because they get offended by jokes when that's not really even happening, right? So last week we talked about Jerry Seinfeld and his comments. I'll link to that video down below. And I pointed to a clip from 2015 when Jerry Seinfeld was on The Late Show with Seth Meyers, or one of those guys. I think it was Seth Meyers. And the example that he gave of people who are offended by his jokes was a joke that he told about young people. They're just obsessed with their phones and they're scrolling on it like a gay French monarch or something. I don't remember the joke. But anyways, he said that nobody laughed, and it was because he assumed that people were offended. He said that he felt their thoughts and that they felt like, and he felt like they felt like he was being insensitive towards gay people and homophobic. But nobody actually said that. Like, this was something that he made up. He assumed that that was what they were thinking, when in actuality, I think they just didn't find the joke funny at all. But because they didn't laugh, he assumed that it was because they were woke and triggered or some bullshit. So I'll conclude by repeating what I said about comedians in that video. So The problem isn't that people are offended. The problem is that comedians need to write better jokes. Because having some variation of the I identify as / my pronouns are X and Y joke isn't funny. It's the same shit we've heard again and again and again. People aren't offended. They're just not laughing because you're not funny. And if you can't write better jokes that make us laugh, then I don't want to hear you whine about how you can't write edgy jokes no more, because the problem is you're not writing good jokes. The problem is your jokes just aren't funny. That's a you problem. Now you can keep coping and seething about how everyone's too triggered by your edgy content when that's not actually the problem. You're not cutting to the core of the issue here. But I mean, this is what Jon Stewart is getting at, and it's why he's relevant and they're not so relevant. I mean,
what's the name of that British comedian who like goes out of his way to announce that he's going to be offending you or testing you to see how much offense you can take? Where he's like, I will now be trying out different things. Like, you will hear the sound of my voice. Ha ha. That's how I laugh. Jimmy Carr. Yeah, that piece of shit. Someone played me one of his clips where it was just like a variation on the one joke, of course. He's like, oh, now there's 10 pronouns. Yes, those pronouns are not for trans people. They're only for non-binary people after all. And those pronouns are ew, 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 ew. And I'm just like, make with the funny, man. Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, I'm offended because I'm fucking bored. I'd be offended because I wasted cash on this shit. I'm like sitting here. I want to be entertained, you know?
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We first want to give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. This program is produced thanks to the generous support of our Patreon supporters: Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbar Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multi Mondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bomey, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Travis McClinton, and Words Greenwood, as well as every other person you see on the screen right now. This show would not be possible without them. And if you want to join these wonderful people who make this entire program possible, simply go to patreon.com/the Serfs and you can unlock uncensored and bonus episodes and, you know, help us exist.